The bell above the door chimed its familiar greeting, and the scent of yesterday's grease mixed with industrial cleaner filled her lungs like an old, not entirely pleasant friend. "You're gonna wear out that doorbell coming in early every single day," Marco called from the kitchen, his voice gravelly from 40 years of smoking before he quit. The sound of eggs cracking against the griddle punctuated his words. "And you're gonna wear out that joke saying it every single day," Claire shot back, tying her apron around her waist. The fabric was worn soft from countless washings. The diner's logo, a coffee cup with a smiling face, faded to the point where the smile looked more like a smirk. Marco chuckled, the sound warm and familiar. He'd been like a father to Claire since she'd started working there 3 years ago, fresh out of the foster care system with nothing but a high school diploma and a determination to make something of herself. The diner wasn't glamorous. The vinyl booths were cracked, the linoleum floor had seen better decades, and the neighborhood had a reputation that kept the tourists away. But it was hers in a way nothing else had ever been. Claire moved through her opening routine with practiced efficiency. Fill the sugar dispensers, check the salt and pepper shakers, make sure the ketchup bottles were full, and the labels faced forward, wipe down the counters even though they'd been wiped down the night before. It was meditative, this ritual, a way of bringing order to a world that had always felt just slightly chaotic. The diner sat on a corner in a neighborhood that the city planners had forgotten, and the real estate developers hadn't discovered yet. Aging brick buildings lined the streets, their fire escapes creating geometric shadows in the early morning light. Small businesses, a laundromat, a corner store with bars on the windows, a check-cashing place, occupied the ground floors, while apartments stacked above them like weathered boxes. It wasn't the safest neighborhood. Claire knew that. She'd learned to walk with purpose, keys threaded between her fingers, eyes aware but not afraid. She'd learned which streets to avoid after dark and which regulars at the diner were harmless, and which ones she should keep the counter between herself and. But it was also a neighborhood where Mrs. Chen from the laundromat would save her the slightly bruised fruit from her son's grocery store, where Marcus the mailman knew everyone's business and wasn't afraid to check on the elderly residents, where community meant something real and tangible. The morning customers trickled in with the rising sun. First came the construction workers, ordering coffee so black it could strip paint and breakfast sandwiches to go. Then the nurses finishing night shifts at the hospital 6 blocks away, their scrubs wrinkled and their eyes tired but kind. The retired teachers who met every morning for coffee and conversation. The single mother with 3 kids who always ordered one breakfast plate and split it 4 ways, and to whom Claire always accidentally brought extra toast. Claire knew all their names, knew their orders, knew that Mr. Patterson took his coffee with 2 sugars and 1 cream, that Denise the nurse was lactose intolerant but would occasionally risk it for a cheese omelet, that the construction crew always left exactly 15%, calculated to the penny. "You're too good at this job, kid," Marco had told her more than once. Too smart to be slinging hash forever. But Claire didn't mind. There was dignity in the work, in the small kindnesses she could offer. A warm smile to someone who looked like they needed it, an extra coffee refill, remembering that today was someone's birthday or that their kid had just started college. In a neighborhood where people often felt invisible, Claire saw them. By mid-morning, the rush had settled into a comfortable lull. Claire was refilling the napkin dispensers when she heard it, a sound that didn't belong. The screech of tires, too fast, too desperate, the sickening crunch of metal impacting something solid. Time seemed to slow down in that strange way it does when something wrong is happening. Claire's head snapped toward the window. Outside, a black SUV had jumped the curb and crashed into a light pole not 20 feet from the diner's entrance. The front end was crumpled, steam rising from the hood like breath on a cold morning. "Call 911, Claire shouted to Marco, already moving toward the door. "Claire, wait!" Marco started, but she was already outside. The morning air was crisp, carrying the smell of burnt rubber and something chemical from the damaged vehicle. Claire's heart pounded as she approached the SUV, her nursing school dropout training kicking in. Assess the scene, check for dangers, approach with caution. The driver's side door opened and a man stumbled out. Even before she saw his face clearly, Claire felt the shift in the atmosphere. It was like the air itself had changed, become heavier, more dangerous. The man was tall, probably in his late 30s, wearing an expensive dark suit now torn at the shoulder. Blood trickled from a cut above his eyebrow. He took 2 unsteady steps away from the vehicle and then his legs seemed to give out. He collapsed onto the sidewalk, conscious but clearly disoriented. And that's when Claire heard it. A sound that cut through everything else. A child crying. The back door of the SUV was partially open, and through it, Claire could see a car seat. A little girl, no more than 3 or 4 years old, with dark curls and enormous brown eyes filled with tears. Blood stained her white dress. Whether hers or from the accident, Claire couldn't tell. "Someone help!" Claire called out, looking around. A small crowd had begun to gather, people drawn by the noise of the crash. But something strange was happening. As they got closer and got a good look at the man on the ground, they stopped. Some backed away. Others pulled out their phones, not to call for help but to film, to whisper to each other. Claire heard the whispers, fragments of conversation that made her stomach clench. "That's Anthony DeLuca. The DeLuca family. Don't get involved. Dangerous." Tommy Rodriguez, one of the regulars who worked at the auto shop down the street, grabbed Claire's arm as she moved toward the SUV. "Claire, no. You don't want to get involved in this. That's Anthony DeLuca. Do you understand what I'm saying?" Claire did understand. Even though she'd only lived in this neighborhood for 3 years, even though she kept her head down and her nose clean, she'd heard the name. Everyone had. The DeLuca family had roots in this city that went back generations. Roots that grew in shadows and fed on things people didn't talk about openly. Anthony DeLuca was a name spoken carefully, a name associated with power and fear and things that happened to people who asked too many questions. The kind of man you crossed the street to avoid. The kind of man whose business you didn't want to know. But all Claire could hear was that little girl crying. "There's a child in there," Claire said, pulling her arm free from Tommy's grip. "Claire, listen to me." Tommy tried again, but Claire was already moving. She approached the SUV, her hands shaking but her steps steady. The little girl had managed to unbuckle herself from the car seat and was trying to climb out, her small hands struggling with the door. When she saw Claire, she reached out instinctively, the universal gesture of a child who needs help. "It's okay, sweetheart," Claire said softly, opening the door wider. "I've got you." The child practically launched herself into Claire's arms, small hands gripping Claire's uniform, her face buried against Claire's shoulder. She was trembling, her breath coming in hitching sobs. Claire could feel the rapid hammering of her heart, like a small bird's. Claire quickly assessed her for injuries. The blood on her dress seemed to be from a nosebleed, scary looking, but not life-threatening. There was a small cut on her forehead, probably from being jostled in the crash, but her pupils were equal and reactive, her breathing normal despite the crying. You're okay, Claire murmured, one hand supporting the child's back, the other cradling her head. "I've got you. You're safe now." On the ground a few feet away, Anthony DeLuca was trying to push himself up, his face contorted with effort and pain. "Sophia," he managed to say, his voice hoarse. "My daughter, she's okay," Claire called to him, still holding the little girl, Sophia, close. "She's scared, but she's okay." Anthony's eyes found Claire's, and for a moment, the fear and desperation in them was so raw, so human, that Claire forgot everything she'd heard about him. He was just a father, terrified for his child. Then his eyes rolled back and he collapsed again, this time completely unconscious. The crowd had grown larger, but no one came closer. They stood in a loose circle, watching, filming, but not helping. Claire saw the fear in their faces, the way they looked at the unconscious man, like he might wake up and strike at any moment. A sleek black car pulled up to the scene, parking at an angle that blocked the street. 2 men in dark suits got out, moving with a purpose and confidence that spoke of authority, not the legal kind. The crowd parted for them like water around a stone. The older of the 2 men, probably in his 50s with silver threading through his dark hair, approached the scene with quick, efficient strides. His eyes swept over the crashed SUV, the unconscious Anthony, and finally landed on Claire holding Sophia. "Give me the child," he said. It wasn't a request. Sophia's grip on Claire tightened, her small body pressing closer. Claire felt the tremor of fear that ran through her. "She's scared," Claire said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Let's just wait for the ambulance," I said. "Give me the child." The man's voice was harder now, ice wrapped in silk. He stepped closer, reaching for Sophia. Sophia let out a small cry and buried her face deeper into Claire's shoulder. Her fingers twisted so tightly in Claire's uniform that Claire could feel the fabric straining. Something fierce awakened in Claire, something protective and primal. "She doesn't want to go to you, she's terrified. The ambulance will be here any second and they can check both of them properly." "You don't understand the situation," the man began. No, you don't understand, Claire interrupted, and she was as surprised as anyone by the strength in her voice. I'm a person who stopped to help an injured child, that's all, and I'm not going to hand her over to a stranger when she's this scared. When the paramedics get here, they can make sure she's okay, and you can sort out the rest. The man's eyes narrowed, his jaw tightening. For a moment, Claire thought she'd made a terrible mistake. The crowd had gone quiet, everyone watching this standoff with the kind of horrified fascination usually reserved for car crashes, which, she supposed, this literally was. Then, in the distance, sirens, growing louder. The man's expression shifted, calculation replacing confrontation. He pulled out his phone and made a quick call, speaking in a low voice that Claire couldn't hear over Sophia's crying and the approaching sirens. The ambulance arrived first, followed closely by 2 police cars. The paramedics, a woman named Jess, whom Claire recognized from the diner, and her partner Marcus, jumped out with practiced efficiency. Claire? Jess said, surprised. What happened? Car crash, Claire explained quickly, stepping back to give them room to work. The driver's unconscious, was disoriented before he passed out. The little girl seems okay, mostly scared, but she might have hit her head. Her nose was bleeding, but it stopped. Jess nodded, moving to check on Anthony while Marcus approached Claire and Sophia. Hey there, sweetheart, Marcus said gently, his voice trained in the art of calming frightened children. My name's Marcus. Can you tell me your name? Sophia peeked out from Claire's shoulder but didn't speak, her eyes wide and uncertain. Her name's Sophia, Claire supplied. She's scared. She won't let me put her down. That's okay, Marcus said. Sophia, I just need to check and make sure you're not hurt anywhere, okay? You can stay right there with... He looked at Claire questioningly. Claire, you can stay right there with Claire. I'm just going to look at you really quick, okay? Over the next few minutes, Marcus did a gentle but thorough assessment, while Sophia remained in Claire's arms. A small cut on the forehead that would need cleaning but not stitches. No signs of concussion. The nosebleed had indeed stopped. Probably some bruising that would show up later, but overall, remarkably unharmed. She should still go to the hospital to get checked out properly, Marcus said. You did good, keeping her calm. Jess and her team were loading Anthony onto a stretcher. He was still unconscious, an oxygen mask now over his face. The sight seemed to distress Sophia even more. Daddy, she whimpered, reaching toward him. Your daddy's going to be okay, Claire said, though she had no way of knowing if that was true. These people are going to help him. They're very good at helping people. The man in the suit, Claire heard someone call him Vincent, was speaking intently with the police officers, gesturing toward the SUV, toward Anthony, his posture suggesting authority even in conversation with the law. Miss, we're going to need to take the child to the hospital as well, one of the police officers said to Claire. Are you family? No, I work at the diner over there. I heard the crash and came to help. We're going to need a statement from you. Did you see what happened? I heard the crash and came outside, that's all. The man, Mr. DeLuca, he was conscious at first, tried to get up, but then he passed out. I got the little girl out of the car seat because she was crying and scared. Vincent had finished with the other officers and now approached Claire and the police officer. The child will be accompanied by family, he said firmly. I work for Mr. DeLuca. I can provide all necessary information at the hospital. The police officer looked uncertain, caught between Vincent's certainty and the unusual nature of the situation. And you are? Vincent Moretti. I'm Mr. DeLuca's chief of security. He produced identification, business cards, documents that Claire couldn't see but that seemed to satisfy the officer's immediate questions. The child seems pretty attached to this young woman, the officer observed. Indeed, Sophia had locked her arms around Claire's neck and showed no signs of letting go. That's temporary. The trauma of the accident, Vincent said dismissively. Once we're at the hospital and she's had a chance to calm down. No! Sophia's voice was small but fierce, the first word Claire had heard her speak. Stay with Claire. Want Claire. Everyone paused, looking at this tiny girl who had found her voice in defense of the stranger who'd held her. Jess approached the group, having secured Anthony in the ambulance. Look, I don't know the family situation here, but that little girl is terrified and the only person she'll let near her is Claire. Medically speaking, it would be better for her to have a familiar, calming presence during transport and initial examination. Less stress, less chance of overlooking an injury because she's too upset to cooperate. Vincent looked like he wanted to argue, but another glance at Sophia's determined face seemed to give him pause. He pulled out his phone again, stepped away, made another low-voiced call. When he returned, his expression was carefully neutral. Fine. Miss Wilson. Claire Wilson. Miss Wilson. You'll accompany Sophia to the hospital. But understand, his eyes hardened, you'll be under supervision the entire time. This is a family matter, and your involvement ends once the child is calm and checked by doctors. Claire wanted to argue, wanted to say that she didn't want to be involved in whatever this was, but Sophia's small hand was in hers now, trusting and terrified, and she couldn't bring herself to let go. Okay, she agreed. As she climbed into the ambulance with Sophia, Claire caught a glimpse of Marco standing in the doorway of the diner, his face tight with worry. She gave him a small wave, trying to communicate that she was okay, that she'd be back soon. The ambulance doors closed with a decisive thunk. You're doing good, Jess said quietly to Claire as the vehicle started moving, sirens wailing. Kid needs someone right now, and you stepped up. That takes courage. Courage. Claire turned the word over in her mind as she held Sophia, as they rushed through the city streets toward the hospital. It didn't feel like courage. It felt like the only choice she could have made, the only one that wouldn't have left her awake at night wondering, what if? Sophia had stopped crying but still trembled occasionally, like aftershocks of fear. Claire found herself humming softly, a lullaby she'd heard once in one of her foster homes from one of the few foster mothers who'd been kind. She couldn't remember the words, but the melody had stuck with her. Sophia's breathing gradually evened out, her small body relaxing incrementally against Claire's. You're a natural, Marcus observed, checking Sophia's vitals one more time. Got kids of your own? No, Claire said. I was a scared kid once. I remember what it felt like. I remember the people who were kind and the ones who weren't. The hospital came into view, its tall buildings and emergency entrance lit up like a beacon. The ambulance pulled up to the bay, and suddenly everything was motion and controlled chaos again. Anthony was rushed away immediately, a team of doctors and nurses surrounding his stretcher. Claire heard fragments of medical terminology, urgent but professional voices calling out vitals and instructions. Sophia tried to follow her father, struggling in Claire's arms. Daddy! Want Daddy! I know, sweetheart. I know, Claire soothed. But the doctors need to help him right now. They need space to work. You'll see him soon, okay? I promise. It was a promise Claire had no authority to make, but it felt necessary. A pediatric nurse approached, her smile warm and practiced. Hi there. My name is Sarah. And who do we have here? This is Sophia, Claire said. She was in a car accident. The paramedics checked her out, but we want to be extra sure she's okay, Sarah finished. Of course. Sophia, can you come with me? We have a special room with toys and... Sophia's grip tightened on Claire. No, stay with Claire. Sarah's eyes met Claire's, a question in them. I'm not family, Claire explained. I was there when it happened. She won't let me go. Well then, Sarah said practically. You'll just have to come with us, won't you? Come on, both of you. Let's get you into an exam room. The examination room was decorated with cheerful murals of cartoon animals, clearly designed to make children feel less afraid. Sarah was gentle and efficient, talking Sophia through each step of the examination. Claire helped distract the little girl, making silly faces, playing peekaboo, anything to keep her calm and cooperative. Vincent appeared in the doorway about 20 minutes into the examination, his presence filling the small room with an uncomfortable tension. With him was a woman in her 60s, well-dressed, her face lined with worry. How is she? The woman asked, moving toward the exam table. Sophia looked at her but didn't reach out, instead pressing closer to Claire. Physically, she appears to be fine, Sarah said. Minor abrasions, no signs of concussion or internal injuries. We'll want to keep her for observation for a few hours just to be safe, but I don't see anything concerning. Thank God, the woman breathed. Sophia, sweetheart, it's Nonna. You remember Nonna, don't you? Sophia nodded but didn't leave Claire's lap. Vincent stepped forward. Miss Wilson, thank you for your assistance. We can take it from here. Claire looked down at Sophia, whose small hand had found Claire's and was holding on tight. I don't think... Sophia needs to be with family now, Vincent said, his tone leaving no room for argument. You've done what you could. It's time for you to go. But she's... Claire started. Vincent. The older woman's voice was quiet but carried authority. Look at her. She's terrified. Let's not make this harder than it needs to be. Vincent's jaw clenched, but he nodded once, shortly. What's your name, dear? The woman asked Claire. Claire Wilson, ma'am. I'm Isabella DeLuca, Anthony's mother, and I can't thank you enough for what you've done today. Her eyes were kind, genuinely grateful, but there was something else in them too. A wariness. A calculation. But Vincent is right. This is a family matter and you've already gone above and beyond. A nurse appeared in the doorway. Mrs. DeLuca, your son is awake. He's asking for his daughter. Relief washed over Isabella's face. Oh, thank God. Can we? He's stable, but he needs to rest. You can see him briefly. The little one too, if she's ready. Sophia's head snapped up at that. Daddy's okay? Your daddy's okay, the nurse confirmed with a smile. Would you like to see him? For the first time since the accident, Sophia's face lit up. She scrambled off Claire's lap, suddenly willing to let go, her entire focus on seeing her father. Isabella reached for Sophia's hand, and this time, Sophia took it. But as they reached the doorway, the little girl stopped, turned back to Claire. Thank you, Claire, she said, her voice small but clear. Claire felt her throat tighten. You're welcome, sweetheart. You be brave, okay? Sophia nodded solemnly, then allowed herself to be led away. Claire sat alone in the examination room, the sudden absence of Sophia's weight in her arms feeling strange, hollow. Sarah was writing notes in a chart, but she glanced up at Claire with a knowing smile. You okay? Yeah, Claire said, though she wasn't entirely sure. Yeah, I think so. That was really kind what you did. Most people would have walked away. Most people did walk away, Claire pointed out. But not you. Sarah finished her notes. The police are going to want to talk to you before you leave. Get your statement about the accident, and... She hesitated. Just be careful, okay? The DeLuca name carries a lot of weight around here. Not all of it good. Claire nodded, understanding the warning even if she didn't fully grasp the implications. The police interview was brief. Claire told them what she'd seen, which wasn't much. The crash had already happened when she came outside. She'd helped the child because the child needed help. No, she didn't see any other vehicles involved. No, she didn't know the DeLuca family. No, she had no information about what might have caused the accident. The officer taking her statement seemed satisfied, gave her a card with a case number in case she remembered anything else, and told her she was free to go. Claire stood outside the hospital, the morning sun now high in the sky. She'd been gone from the diner for hours. Her shift was long over. She pulled out her phone to call Marco, let him know she was okay when she heard her name. Miss Wilson. Vincent approached, his expression unreadable. Mr. DeLuca would like to speak with you. Claire's first instinct was to refuse, to say she'd done what she came to do and it was time to go back to her normal life. But something, curiosity maybe, or a sense that this story wasn't quite finished, made her nod. Okay. Vincent led her through the hospital corridors to a private room on the 4th floor. 2 men in suits stood outside the door, their postures alert. They stepped aside at Vincent's approach, and he opened the door, gesturing for Claire to enter. The room was private, expensive looking. Anthony DeLuca lay in the hospital bed, looking pale and tired but alert. Sophia was curled up beside him, her head on his chest, finally peaceful. Isabella sat in a chair nearby. Anthony's eyes found Claire's as she entered, and she saw something in them. Gratitude, yes, but also assessment. He was studying her, trying to understand who she was and why she'd done what she'd done. Miss Wilson, he said, his voice rough but steady. Please sit. Claire remained standing. I'm glad you're okay, Mr. DeLuca, and I'm glad Sophia is okay, but I should really get going. You saved my daughter's life today, Anthony interrupted. The paramedics saved. You kept her calm. You kept her safe. When everyone else was too afraid to come near us, you put yourself at risk to help a child you didn't know. He paused, his hand gently stroking Sophia's hair. Why? It was a simple question with a complicated answer. Claire thought about her own childhood, about being scared and alone, about the strangers who'd helped her, and the ones who'd looked away. Because she needed help, Claire said simply. That's all. Anthony studied her for a long moment. Most people in this neighborhood know who I am, know what that means, and they stay away, but you didn't. I saw a little girl who was hurt and scared, that's what I saw. Something shifted in Anthony's expression, something that might have been respect. I owe you a debt, Miss Wilson. You don't owe me anything. I'm just glad everyone's okay. Claire moved toward the door. I should really... Claire? Sophia's sleepy voice stopped her. The little girl had opened her eyes and was looking at her. You'll come back? The question hung in the air, innocent and hopeful, completely unaware of the complications it carried. Claire looked at this child who'd trusted her, at this man whose reputation should have terrified her, at the impossible situation she'd somehow stumbled into. Claire started. not knowing how to answer, not knowing what was the right thing to say. Vincent appeared in the doorway. Miss Wilson's statement to the police is complete. There's no reason for her to be involved further. He was right. This wasn't her world, wasn't her family, wasn't her problem. She'd done the good deed, the kind thing. Now it was time to go back to her life, to the safety of the familiar, to a world where she understood the rules. But Sophia's eyes were still on her, hopeful and trusting, and Claire found she couldn't quite make herself say goodbye. Maybe, Claire heard herself say, maybe I could visit, just to make sure you're doing okay. Sophia's face lit up and even Anthony looked surprised. That's very kind of you, Isabella said carefully. But surely you have your own life, your own responsibilities. I do, Claire agreed. But I could visit, just for a little while, if that would be okay. Anthony and Isabella exchanged a look that Claire couldn't quite read. Finally, Anthony nodded. If you'd like to visit, you'd be welcome, he said. Sophia clearly feels safe with you. And, he paused, choosing his words carefully. Given the circumstances, it might actually be helpful to have someone Sophia trusts nearby, just until things settle down. There was weight to those words. Implications Claire didn't fully understand, but she found herself nodding anyway. Okay, I'll visit. Tomorrow, maybe, after my shift. Tomorrow, Sophia agreed sleepily, already drifting off again against her father's chest. Claire left the hospital in a daze, the morning's events playing through her mind like a movie she'd somehow stepped into. By the time she got back to the diner, it was well past noon. Marco took one look at her and poured her a cup of coffee. You're okay? He asked, and the concern in his voice was paternal, protective. I'm okay, Claire confirmed. The DeLuca family, Marco started, then stopped, seeming to struggle with how to continue. Claire, they're not. You need to be careful. These aren't people you want to get involved with. I know, Claire said. Everyone keeps telling me that. But Marco, there was this little girl and she was so scared and everyone just walked away. Everyone was too afraid to help a child. Marco sighed, his weathered hands wrapped around his own coffee cup. Fear isn't always about cowardice, kiddo. Sometimes it's about wisdom, about knowing which fights you can win and which ones will destroy you. I'm not fighting anyone. I just helped a scared kid. And now, I told them I'd visit, make sure she's okay. Marco closed his eyes briefly, and when he opened them, they were sad. Be careful, Claire. Please. I know you have a good heart. I know you see the best in people. But the world isn't always kind to people with good hearts. Claire thought about that as she finished her shift, as she took the bus home to her small apartment, as she lay in bed that night unable to sleep. 3 seconds. That's all it had taken. 3 seconds to decide to run toward the crash instead of away from it. 3 seconds to reach for a child everyone else was afraid to touch. 3 seconds that had somehow changed the trajectory of her entire life. She thought about Sophia's small hand in hers, about the trust in those big brown eyes, about a man who was supposed to be a monster looking at his daughter with such pure love that it had made him completely human. Claire didn't know what tomorrow would bring, didn't know what she'd walked into or what the consequences might be. All she knew was that she'd made a choice, the only choice she could have made, and still lived with herself. And somewhere across the city, in a private hospital room, a little girl slept peacefully for the first time since the accident, knowing that the kind lady named Claire would come back tomorrow, just like she promised. Some decisions take years to make. Others take just 3 seconds, and sometimes those 3 seconds change everything. Claire didn't sleep well that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the crash replaying in her mind. The crumpled metal, Sophia's frightened face, Anthony DeLuca's eyes filled with desperation before he lost consciousness. She kept waking up, checking her phone for the time, counting the hours until her shift would end, and she could keep her promise to visit. The morning shift at Marco's diner felt surreal. Everything was exactly the same cracked vinyl booths, the same regulars ordering the same breakfasts, the same smell of coffee and toast. But Claire felt fundamentally different, like she'd crossed some invisible threshold and couldn't quite find her way back. You look tired, Marco observed, sliding a plate of scrambled eggs across the counter to her during a quiet moment. Eat something. You didn't touch your dinner last night either. Claire picked at the eggs obediently. I'm fine, just didn't sleep great. Still thinking about yesterday? Yeah. Marco was quiet for a moment, wiping down the already clean counter in that way he did when he was thinking. You know, when I was younger, I had a chance to get involved with people like the DeLucas. My brother, he went that route. Thought it was glamorous, thought it was power. He paused, his hands stilling. He died when he was 32, left behind a wife and 2 kids who grew up without a father. Claire looked up at him, seeing the old pain in his eyes. Marco, I'm not getting involved in anything. I'm just checking on a little girl who was in a scary accident. That's all. That's how it starts, Marco said gently. That's always how it starts. With good intentions and helping someone who needs it. But their world, it has gravity, Claire. It pulls you in, and before you know it, you can't remember how to get out. I'll be careful, Claire promised, though she wasn't entirely sure what being careful meant in this context. The day crawled by with agonizing slowness. Every time the bell above the door chimed, Claire's head snapped up, half expecting to see Vincent or one of Anthony's other associates. But it was always just the regular customers, the familiar faces that made up the rhythm of her days. Tommy Rodriguez came in around 11, ordering his usual burger and fries. He looked at Claire with something between concern and curiosity. Hey Claire, you doing okay after yesterday? I'm fine, Tommy. Thanks for asking. Look, I know I tried to stop you from getting involved, but what you did, helping that kid, that took guts. He lowered his voice. Just be smart, okay? The DeLuca family, they're not like us regular people. They play by different rules. It was the same warning, dressed in different words. Claire was beginning to understand that everyone in the neighborhood knew something about the DeLucas that she didn't. Some shared knowledge that made them all nervous on her behalf. I know, she said. Everyone keeps telling me that. But I can't just ignore a child who needs help. Tommy nodded slowly. No, I guess you can't. That's not who you are. He paused. But promise me something. If things get weird, if you feel uncomfortable or unsafe, you get out. Don't let loyalty or guilt keep you in a bad situation. I promise, Claire said, and meant it. Her shift finally ended at 3 o'clock. Claire changed out of her uniform in the diner's tiny bathroom, putting on jeans and a simple blue sweater. She studied herself in the mirror, 23 years old with brown hair pulled back in a ponytail, hazel eyes that her third foster mother had once called too trusting, and a face that she'd always considered unremarkable. She didn't look like someone who should be walking into the complicated world of people like the DeLucas, but she'd made a promise to a scared little girl, and Claire had learned young that promises were sacred, especially to children who'd had too many broken. The hospital was a 20-minute bus ride from the diner. Claire watched the neighborhood transform as they traveled, from the worn working-class blocks she knew to areas with newer buildings, more trees, people in business suits instead of work uniforms. It was all still the same city, but it might as well have been different worlds. She stopped at the hospital gift shop debating. Finally, she settled on a small stuffed bunny, soft and white with floppy ears. It was simple, nothing extravagant, but it seemed like something a scared little girl might want to hold on to. The elevator ride to the 4th floor felt longer than it should have. Claire's stomach fluttered with nerves. What was she doing? She didn't belong here. She should turn around, go home, let these people handle their own family matters. But then the elevator doors opened, and there was no turning back. The 2 men in suits were still stationed outside Anthony's room, though they were different men than yesterday. They watched Claire approach with the same assessing look Vincent had given her, measuring, calculating, determining if she was a threat. I'm Claire Wilson, she said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. I was here yesterday. Sophia asked me to visit. One of the men spoke into a radio, a brief exchange that Claire couldn't quite hear. A moment later, the door opened and Isabella DeLuca appeared. Claire, she said, and there was warmth in her voice that seemed genuine. Sophia has been asking about you all day. Please come in. The hospital room looked different in the afternoon light. Anthony was sitting up in bed, looking significantly better than he had yesterday. His color was back, and though there were still bandages visible, he seemed alert and focused. Sophia was sitting on the bed next to him, coloring in a book with intense concentration. Claire! Sophia's face lit up when she saw her. She scrambled off the bed and ran over, wrapping her small arms around Claire's legs in an enthusiastic hug. Hey, sweetheart, Claire said, feeling some of her nervousness melt away. This, at least, was simple. A child who was happy to see her. How are you feeling today? I'm okay. The doctors say I'm very brave. Sophia looked up at Claire with those big brown eyes. Did you bring me something? Sophia, that's not polite, Isabella started, but Claire was already pulling out the stuffed bunny. I brought you a friend, Claire said, handing it to Sophia. I thought maybe you'd like someone soft to hold on to. Sophia's eyes went wide with delight. She took the bunny carefully, like it was made of glass, and hugged it to her chest. She's perfect. I'm going to name her Claire. You're going to name the bunny Claire. Claire couldn't help but smile. Because you're my friend and she's my friend, so she should have your name. The logic was pure child, unassailable in its simplicity. That's very sweet, Sophia. Why don't you show Claire your coloring book while the adults talk for a moment? Isabella suggested gently. Sophia took Claire's hand and led her to the chair beside Anthony's bed, chattering about the pictures she'd been working on. A princess, a castle, a garden with flowers. Claire listened and admired her work, aware of the adult conversation happening just behind her. The doctors say I can go home tomorrow, Anthony was telling his mother, keeping his voice low. They want to keep me one more night for observation, but there's no serious damage. Thank God, Isabella murmured. And the investigation? Vincent is handling it. The police are calling it a mechanical failure. Brake line issue. They're closing the case. There was something in the way they spoke, carefully and quietly, that suggested there was more to the story than mechanical failure. But before Claire could think too much about it, Sophia was tugging on her sleeve. Claire, will you color with me? Sure, sweetheart. For the next 20 minutes, Claire sat on the floor with Sophia, coloring pictures of butterflies and flowers, listening to Sophia's running commentary about which colors were best and why purple was superior to all other colors in most situations. It was peaceful, normal, a pocket of childhood innocence in this strange situation. Isabella brought them juice boxes, apple for Sophia, cranberry for Claire, and sat nearby, watching with a soft expression. You're very good with her, Isabella observed. She's easy to be good with, Claire replied. She's a sweet kid. She is. She's the light of Anthony's life. After her mother, Isabella trailed off, sadness crossing her features. Well, she's everything to him. Claire wanted to ask about Sophia's mother, about what had happened, but it felt too personal, too invasive. Instead, she just nodded and went back to coloring. A knock at the door interrupted the peaceful moment. Vincent entered, carrying a tablet and wearing his characteristic serious expression. He nodded to Isabella, glanced at Anthony, and his eyes paused on Claire with what might have been surprise. Miss Wilson, I didn't expect to see you here. I promised Sophia I'd visit, Claire said simply. Vincent's expression was unreadable. Mr. DeLuca, we need to discuss security arrangements for when you return home. Can it wait? Anthony asked, his eyes on his daughter. Unfortunately, no. The situation requires immediate attention. Anthony sighed, then looked at Claire. Would you mind staying with Sophia for a few minutes? We need to have a private conversation. Of course, Claire agreed, though the request made her nervous. What kind of security situation required such urgency? Isabella, Anthony, and Vincent moved to the far corner of the room, speaking in voices too low for Claire to hear. Sophia, oblivious to the adult concerns, continued coloring happily, now working on a picture of what she said was her house. We have a big garden, Sophia explained, with roses. Mommy planted them before she went to heaven. Daddy makes sure they're always pretty for her. Claire's heart squeezed. That's beautiful, Sophia. Your mommy would love that. Do you have a mommy, Claire? It was an innocent question, but it landed with unexpected weight. Not really, Claire said carefully. I grew up in different homes with different families. Why? Sometimes families are complicated, but the important thing is finding people who care about you, right? Sophia considered this with the seriousness only a child could muster. I think you need a family, Claire. Everyone needs a family. You're very wise, you know that? Sophia grinned. Nona says I'm smart like Mommy was. The adults' conversation seemed to be wrapping up. Vincent looked frustrated, Isabella worried, and Anthony determined. They returned to the main area of the room, their discussion clearly unresolved but tabled for now. Claire, Anthony said, and there was something in his voice that made her pay attention. Could we speak for a moment? Privately? Isabella took Sophia's hand. Come on, sweet pea. Let's go get some ice cream from the cafeteria. But Claire just got here. Claire will be here when we get back, Isabella assured her. And you can tell her all about what flavor you chose. Once they were alone, Anthony gestured to the chair beside his bed. Claire sat, feeling suddenly nervous under his steady gaze. Thank you for coming, he said. Sophia hasn't stopped talking about you since yesterday. She's a special kid. She is. Anthony was quiet for a moment, seeming to gather his thoughts. Miss Wilson, Claire, I need to be honest with you about something. The accident yesterday wasn't an accident. Claire's stomach dropped. What do you mean? Someone tampered with my vehicle. They wanted to. He paused, choosing his words carefully. Cause me harm. And in doing so, they put my daughter at risk. Oh my God, Claire breathed. Have you told the police? It's being handled. The vagueness of that statement sent a chill through Claire. What does that mean, it's being handled? Anthony studied her, and she could see him making calculations, deciding how much to tell her. It means that the people responsible will face consequences, and measures are being taken to ensure nothing like this happens again. You need to go to the police. Claire, his voice was gentle but firm. The police can't help with this. Not really. This is complicated. Claire stood up, suddenly needing distance. I don't understand. Someone tried to hurt you and your daughter, and you're not going to the authorities. I have certain business complications, relationships and obligations that make my situation unique. Business complications, Claire repeated, and suddenly all the warnings from Marco, from Tommy, from everyone who'd told her to stay away made terrible sense. You mean illegal business? Anthony didn't flinch from her directness. I mean business that exists in gray areas, that operates under different rules than what you're used to. I don't want to know about this, Claire said, backing toward the door. I came to check on Sophia, that's all. I shouldn't be here, I shouldn't know any of this. You're right, Anthony said, surprising her. You shouldn't, and I'm sorry for putting you in this position. But Claire, please understand, my daughter has been through something terrifying. She lost her mother 2 years ago. She has nightmares most nights. She's scared of strangers, especially men. But yesterday, in the middle of the worst moment of her life, you made her feel safe. Claire paused at the door, her hand on the handle. She hasn't felt that kind of security with anyone outside family since her mother died. Anthony continued. I watched her with you. I saw how she trusted you, how she calmed down in your arms. That's not something I can ignore. What are you asking me? I'm asking if you'd be willing to spend time with Sophia. Not every day, not even every week necessarily. Just occasionally, be someone safe for her, someone normal, outside of all this. He gestured vaguely at the room, at himself, at the life he represented. I work at a diner, Claire said. I live in a studio apartment that's barely big enough for me. I don't know anything about your world or how to navigate it. I'm nobody special. That's exactly why you're perfect for this, Anthony said. Sophia doesn't need special. She needs normal. She needs someone who looks at her and sees a little girl, not the daughter of Anthony DeLuca with all the weight that carries. Claire wanted to say no. Every rational part of her brain was screaming to walk away, to go back to her simple, safe life. But she thought about Sophia's small hand in hers, about the trust in those big brown eyes. If I do this, she said slowly, I need to be clear about boundaries. I'm not getting involved in your business, whatever that business is. I'm not being pulled into anything illegal or dangerous. I'm just being kind to a child who needs kindness, Anthony finished. That's all I'm asking. And when Sophia asks questions about what you do, about why you need security, about why people are scared of your name, tell her age-appropriate truths, that Daddy has a complicated job, that some people don't understand our family, that we have people around us to keep us safe. He paused. I've never lied to my daughter Claire, but I also don't tell her things she's too young to understand or that would scare her. Claire walked back to the chair, sat down, looked at this man who was supposed to be dangerous but mostly just looked tired and worried about his child. Okay, she heard herself say, but if at any point I feel uncomfortable, if anything seems wrong or dangerous, I'm out. No guilt, no consequences, I just walk away. Agreed? Agreed, Anthony said. And Claire? Thank you, truly. Before Claire could respond, the door burst open and Sophia rushed in, her face covered in chocolate ice cream and pure joy. Claire, I got chocolate. Nonna says I can finish it if I promise to brush my teeth extra good tonight. The heavy conversation evaporated in the face of a child's enthusiasm. Claire found herself laughing. Using a napkin Isabella handed her to wipe Sophia's face. Chocolate is a good choice, Claire agreed. Very wise. I know, Sophia said with complete confidence. Claire stayed for another hour, reading books to Sophia, playing simple hand games, just being present while Sophia basked in the attention. Isabella sat nearby, working on what looked like a crossword puzzle but clearly keeping a watchful eye. Vincent came and went several times, always with that serious expression, always checking on things Claire didn't understand. When Claire finally said she needed to go, Sophia's face fell with dramatic disappointment. "But you just got here." "I've been here for over 2 hours, sweet pea," Claire said gently. "And I have things I need to do at home. But I'll come visit again soon, okay?" "How soon?" Claire looked at Anthony, who nodded. "How about this weekend? Maybe Saturday?" Sophia's face brightened. "Promise?" "Promise." As Claire prepared to leave, Isabella walked her to the door. "You know," the older woman said quietly, "Anthony doesn't trust easily. And he certainly doesn't let people into Sophia's life lightly. The fact that he's asked you to spend time with her, that means something." "I'm just trying to help," Claire said. "I know, and that's exactly why you're good for her." Isabella pressed a business card into Claire's hand. "My number. If you ever need anything, or if you have questions, or if you just want to talk, please don't hesitate to call." Claire looked at the elegant card. Isabella DeLuca with a phone number and nothing else. No business name, no title, just a name and a way to reach her. "Thank you," Claire said, tucking the card into her pocket. The 2 security men were still outside the door. As Claire passed them, one of them, the younger one with dark hair and kind eyes, spoke up. "That was a good thing you did helping the kid. Not many people would have." "Anyone would have," Claire started. "No," he interrupted gently. "They wouldn't have. And that makes what you did matter more." Claire didn't know what to say to that, so she just nodded and headed for the elevator. The bus ride home felt different than the ride there. Claire stared out the window, watching the city transform again from nice neighborhoods back to her familiar working-class blocks, and tried to process everything that had happened. She'd agreed to spend time with Sophia. She'd agreed to become involved, however peripherally, with a family that everyone said she should avoid. She'd crossed a line she hadn't even known existed, and she couldn't quite figure out how she felt about it. Her phone buzzed as she neared her stop. A text from an unknown number. "This is Vincent Moretti. Mr. DeLuca wanted me to give you my contact information. If you need anything related to visiting Sophia, transportation, scheduling, security clearance at the house, please don't hesitate to call." Claire stared at the message. Security clearance. The casual way these people talked about things that were completely foreign to her life. She saved the number but didn't respond, still not sure what she'd gotten herself into. Her apartment felt especially small and quiet when she got home. Claire made herself a simple dinner, pasta with jarred sauce, nothing fancy, and tried to watch TV, but she couldn't concentrate. Her mind kept drifting back to the hospital, to Sophia's trusting smile, to Anthony's tired eyes, to the weight of promises and choices. She called Marco because he was the closest thing she had to family, and she needed someone to talk to. "How'd it go?" he asked, his voice warm with concern. "It was fine. Sophia was happy to see me. We colored and read books, and it was nice, actually. But I feel like I've stepped into something complicated, something I don't fully understand." Marco was quiet for a moment. "You can still walk away, you know, before you're in too deep." "I know. But Marco, this little girl, she's been through so much. Her mom died. Someone tried to hurt her dad. She's scared, and she needs someone who just sees her as a kid, not as part of all this complicated adult stuff. And that someone has to be you? I don't know if it has to be, but it could be. And isn't that enough of a reason?" She could almost hear Marco smiling through the phone. "You've got the biggest heart of anyone I know, kiddo. Just keep your eyes open, okay? Don't let that big heart blind you to reality." "I won't. I promise." They talked for a while longer, about the diner, about Marco's daughter who was studying to be a veterinarian, about anything and everything except the DeLucas. It was grounding, normal, a reminder of the life Claire had built for herself. After they hung up, Claire pulled out the business card Isabella had given her. She turned it over in her hands, feeling the expensive weight of the paper, thinking about the woman who'd given it to her. Elegant, warm, but with something sharp underneath. Something protective. Claire's phone buzzed again. Another text from Vincent. "Mr. DeLuca and Sophia will be released from the hospital tomorrow afternoon. He's asked if you would be willing to visit them at the family residence this Saturday at 2 p.m. A car can be sent to pick you up if needed." Claire read the message 3 times. The family residence. A car sent to pick her up. Everything about it felt surreal, like she was reading about someone else's life. But then she thought about Sophia's face lighting up when she'd walked into the hospital room, about the little girl who'd named a stuffed bunny after her, about the promise she'd made. She typed back, "I can get there myself. What's the address? Vincent's response came quickly, with an address in a neighborhood Claire had never had reason to visit. One of those areas where the houses were set back from the street behind gates and walls, where neighborhood meant something entirely different. Thank you, Vincent added. Sophia will be very happy. Claire set her phone down and looked around her small apartment. The second-hand furniture, the plants she'd been trying to keep alive, the books stacked on every available surface. This was her life. Simple, safe, predictable. But starting Saturday, she would step into a different world, if only for a few hours a week. A world with security guards and private residences and complications she couldn't fully grasp. The question was, could she navigate both worlds without losing herself in the process? Claire didn't have an answer. All she knew was that she'd made a promise to a little girl, and she intended to keep it. Everything else she'd figure out as she went. She got ready for bed, going through her normal routine, brushing her teeth, washing her face, setting her alarm for the early morning shift. But before she turned off the light, she looked at the business card one more time. Isabella DeLuca had told her to call if she needed anything. Claire had a feeling she might need that number sooner than she'd expected. But for now, for tonight, she was just Claire Wilson, a waitress from a diner in a working-class neighborhood, who'd made a promise to a scared little girl and had every intention of keeping it. She turned off the light and tried to sleep, dreams filled with chocolate ice cream smiles and the weight of small hands trusting in hers. Tomorrow she'd go back to the diner, back to her normal life. But Saturday she'd cross that line again, stepping into a world she didn't understand, for the sake of a child who needed someone to see her as just a little girl. And somewhere across the city, in a hospital room with private security standing guard, Sophia DeLuca slept peacefully, clutching a white stuffed bunny named Claire, dreaming of the kind waitress who'd promised to come back. Some lines once crossed can never be uncrossed. Claire was beginning to understand that. But understanding something and being able to change it were two very different things. And the truth was, even if she could go back and change her decision, even if she could erase that moment when she'd reached for a crying child despite everyone's warnings, she wouldn't. Because some things, some people, were worth the risk, even if you didn't fully understand what you were risking yet. Saturday arrived with autumn sunshine that made the city look almost gentle. Claire changed her outfit 3 times before settling on dark jeans and a simple green sweater, nice enough to be respectful, casual enough to play with a 4-year-old. She studied her reflection one last time, took a deep breath and headed out. The bus ride to the DeLuca neighborhood felt like traveling through different versions of the same city. Her stop was nearly 40 minutes away, in an area where the streets were lined with mature trees and the houses grew progressively larger and more secluded. Claire checked the address Vincent had sent her, then checked it again. The house, no, mansion, sat behind ornate iron gates partially hidden by landscaped gardens. It was beautiful in a way that felt almost intimidating, all stone and glass and carefully maintained perfection. She pressed the call button on the gate's intercom, her heart hammering. "Miss Wilson?" A security guard's voice crackled through the speaker. "Yes, I'm here to see Sophia." The gate swung open silently, revealing a curved driveway that led to the main house. Claire walked slowly, taking in the immaculate gardens, the fountain and the circular drive, the sheer scale of everything. This wasn't just wealth. This was a different universe entirely from her studio apartment above the laundromat. Before she reached the front door, it opened and Sophia came running out, her face bright with joy. Claire, you came!" Claire knelt down just in time to catch the enthusiastic hug. "Of course I came, I promised, didn't I? Come see my room. I have so many toys and I want to show you everything." Sophia grabbed Claire's hand and started pulling her toward the house. "Sophia, let Claire at least come inside first," Isabella's warm voice called from the doorway. She was dressed elegantly but comfortably, her smile genuine. "Welcome, Claire, please come in." The interior of the house was even more impressive than the exterior. High ceilings, artwork that looked expensive, furniture that was clearly chosen by someone with sophisticated taste. But there were also signs of a child's presence. Colorful drawings stuck to the refrigerator visible through an archway, a basket of toys in the corner of the living room, photographs everywhere of Sophia at various ages. Anthony appeared from what looked like a study, moving more carefully than usual but looking significantly better than he had in the hospital. "Claire, thank you for coming. How are you feeling?" Claire asked. "Better every day. The doctors say I was fortunate." His eyes found his daughter and something soft crossed his features. "Very fortunate. Can I show Claire my room now, please?" Sophia bounced impatiently. Anthony laughed. Go ahead, but remember, Claire might want to sit down and have something to drink first. It's okay, Claire assured him. I'd love to see your room, Sophia. Sophia's room was on the second floor, a space that most adults would consider a generous apartment. The walls were painted soft lavender with murals of flowers and butterflies. There were shelves full of books, a play kitchen, a dress-up corner overflowing with costumes, and more stuffed animals than Claire could count. This is my favorite place in the whole house, Sophia announced. Daddy says every princess needs a castle, and this is mine. For the next hour, Claire was given the complete tour, not just of Sophia's room, but of her entire world. The playroom downstairs with its art supplies and building blocks. The garden where Sophia showed her the roses that Mommy planted. The reading nook in the library where Anthony read to her every night. Throughout it all, Claire noticed the security. It was subtle but constant. Cameras in corners, men in suits positioned at various points around the property, sophisticated alarm systems on every door and window. This beautiful house was also a fortress, and Sophia moved through it with the casual acceptance of a child who'd never known anything different. They were in the garden, Sophia picking flowers to make the most beautiful bouquet ever, when Anthony joined them. He moved to sit on a nearby bench, watching his daughter with that expression of pure love Claire had seen in the hospital. She's happy, he said quietly. Really happy. I haven't seen her like this in a long time. She's a wonderful kid, Claire replied. She is, and she deserves a childhood that's as normal as I can give her. Despite, he gestured vaguely at the house, at everything it represented. Claire wanted to ask about Sophia's mother, about what had happened, but before she could find the words, Vincent appeared on the garden path, his face serious. Mr. DeLuca, there's a situation that requires your attention. Anthony's entire demeanor changed, becoming focused and alert. What kind of situation? Vincent's eyes flicked to Claire, then to Sophia, clearly not wanting to speak freely. A business matter. It needs to be addressed immediately. Anthony stood, frustration crossing his features. I'll be right there. He looked at Claire apologetically. I'm sorry. I need to take care of something. Would you mind staying with Sophia for a bit? Of course, Claire said, though unease prickled at her. What kind of business matter required such urgency on a Saturday afternoon? As Anthony walked away with Vincent, their heads bent together in intense conversation, Sophia tugged at Claire's hand. Adults always have boring business to do, she said with a child's wisdom. But we can have fun anyway. Want to have a tea party? I would love to have a tea party. They set up in the gazebo, a structure Claire hadn't even noticed before, tucked into a corner of the garden. Sophia had a complete tea set, child-sized but surprisingly detailed, and she took the ritual very seriously. You have to hold your pinky up, Sophia instructed. That's how fancy ladies drink tea. Claire dutifully held her pinky up, making Sophia giggle. As they played, Isabella joined them, settling into one of the small chairs with surprising grace despite its size. May I join your tea party? Of course, Nona. You can sit next to Claire. For a while it was peaceful. 3 people of different generations, sharing imaginary tea and very real laughter. But Claire couldn't quite shake her awareness of the house behind them, of whatever urgent business was being discussed, of the guards she could see positioned around the property. You're wondering about all of this, Isabella said softly, reading Claire's expression. She said something in Italian to Sophia, who happily went to pick more flowers, giving the adults a moment of privacy. It's not my business, Claire said, but you're curious, and probably a little frightened. Isabella's eyes were kind but knowing. That's smart. Fear keeps us careful. I don't understand this world, Claire admitted. Where I come from, people work regular jobs, pay rent, worry about normal things. She looked around at the estate, at the security, at the life the DeLucas lived. This is like something from a movie. It has its costs, Isabella said quietly. The beautiful house, the security, the walls we build around ourselves, they're not just for show. Anthony has made choices in his life, some good, some complicated, and those choices have consequences. For him, for Sophia, for all of us. Then why? Claire started, then stopped, unsure how to ask what she wanted to know. Why does he continue? Isabella finished. Because leaving isn't as simple as deciding to walk away. There are obligations, histories, people depending on him. But Claire, I want you to know something. She leaned forward, her voice intense. My son loves his daughter more than anything in this world. Everything he does, every choice he makes, it's with her future in mind. He's trying to build something better for her, even if the path there is difficult. Before Claire could respond, Sophia returned with an armful of roses, her face glowing with pride. Look, I picked the prettiest ones. The moment shifted back to innocence, to a child's simple joy in flowers and tea parties, and the presence of people who cared about her. Anthony returned an hour later, looking tired but more relaxed. I'm sorry about that interruption. Everything's settled now. Claire didn't ask what had been settled. She was learning that in this world, some questions were better left unasked. As the afternoon stretched into evening, Isabella invited Claire to stay for dinner. The meal was informal, eaten in the kitchen rather than the formal dining room. Homemade pasta, salad from the garden, conversation that felt surprisingly normal despite the extraordinary setting. Sophia chattered throughout dinner, telling elaborate stories about her stuffed animals and their various adventures. Anthony listened with patient attention, asking questions, encouraging her imagination. It was such a normal scene, a father and daughter, sharing a meal, enjoying each other's company, that Claire almost forgot about the security guards outside, the complicated business matters, the warnings everyone had given her. Almost. When it was time for Claire to leave, Sophia insisted on walking her to the door, still clutching the stuffed bunny that bore Claire's name. You'll come back? Sophia asked, and there was vulnerability in the question that made Claire's heart ache. I'll come back, Claire promised. Maybe next weekend? Sophia's face lit up. Promise? Promise. As Vincent drove her home, she'd tried to insist on taking the bus, but Anthony had firmly overruled her. Claire stared out the window at the city passing by, thinking about everything she'd seen and learned. She was walking a tightrope between two worlds, and she still wasn't sure if she could keep her balance. But for Sophia's sake, she would try. 6 months had passed since that autumn day when Claire first walked through the gates of the DeLuca estate. 6 months of Saturday afternoons spent coloring and reading stories, of tea parties in the gazebo and walks through the garden. 6 months of watching Sophia blossom from a scared, quiet child into a confident, laughing little girl. Claire's life had found a strange new rhythm. Weekday mornings at Marco's diner, weekend afternoons with Sophia, and a growing understanding that sometimes families aren't born, they're chosen. It was a crisp spring morning when everything changed. Claire was wiping down tables at the diner when her phone rang. Isabella's name flashed on the screen, and Claire's stomach immediately tightened. Isabella never called during the week. Claire. Isabella's voice was strained. I need to tell you something, and I need you to stay calm. Claire's hand gripped the phone tighter. What's happened? Anthony has made a decision, a big one. He's agreed to cooperate with federal authorities to provide information about certain business operations. In exchange, we're entering witness protection. The words hit Claire like cold water. Witness protection? What does that mean? It means new identities, a new location, a fresh start. It means Anthony is finally doing what he should have done years ago, choosing his daughter's future over his past. Isabella paused. Claire, he wants to ask you something important. What? Would you be willing to come with us? To be Sophia's guardian to help her transition to this new life. Anthony will maintain custody, but he needs someone Sophia trusts. Someone who represents safety and normalcy for her. Claire's mind reeled. Leave everything behind? Her job, her apartment, Marco, the life she'd built. I know it's asking too much, Isabella began. When? Claire interrupted. Soon, within the month. I know this is overwhelming. Can I think about it? Of course. Take whatever time you need, but Claire, I want you to know, you've already given Sophia something precious. You've shown her that kindness exists, that people can be trusted. Whatever you decide, that gift will stay with her forever. After the call ended, Claire sat in the empty diner, her thoughts spinning. Marco found her there an hour later, staring at nothing. Talk to me, kiddo, he said gently. Claire told him everything. About Anthony's decision, about witness protection, about the impossible choice she was facing. Marco was quiet for a long time. Then he said, What does your heart tell you? My heart says that little girl needs me. That she's been through so much loss already, and I can't be another person who walks away. Claire looked up at him with tears in her eyes. But my head says I'm crazy to even consider this. Sometimes the craziest decisions are the bravest ones, Marco said. And Claire, I've watched you with that kid. I've seen how you light up when you talk about her. You love her. I do, Claire whispered. The truth of it overwhelming. I really do. The decision, once acknowledged, became clear. Claire called Isabella that night. I'll do it. I'll come with you. The next 3 weeks were a blur of paperwork, meetings with federal agents, and quiet goodbyes. Claire gave Marco a month's notice, though he hugged her tight and told her he understood. She donated most of her belongings, keeping only what mattered: photos, a few books, memories packed carefully in boxes that would be shipped to wherever their new life would begin. The hardest part was explaining to Sophia. "We're going on an adventure," Anthony told his daughter Claire sitting beside them. "A big one. New house, new city, new school, and Claire is coming with us." "Claire's coming?" Sophia's face lit up. "Forever? For as long as you need me," Claire promised, taking the little girl's hand. The federal agents worked efficiently. New names, new backgrounds, new documentation. Anthony DeLuca became Andrew Dalton. Sophia would keep her first name. Changing it would be too traumatic, but become Sophia Dalton. And Claire would officially be Sophia's legal guardian, sharing custody with Anthony. "You understand what you're giving up?" the lead agent asked Claire during one of their final meetings. "Your old life ends completely. No contact with anyone from your past, at least for the foreseeable future." "I understand," Claire said. And she did. But some things, some people, were worth any sacrifice. Their new home was in a small coastal town in Oregon, far from the city, far from everything they'd known. The house was modest compared to the DeLuca estate. 3 bedrooms, a small garden, a porch that overlooked the ocean. It was perfect. On their first morning in the new house, Claire made pancakes while Anthony unpacked boxes. Sophia ran from room to room, her laughter echoing through the empty spaces, already making it home. "I still can't believe you did this," Anthony said quietly, watching his daughter play. "Gave up everything for us." "I didn't give up everything," Claire corrected. "I chose what mattered most." Later that week, Claire surprised them both. She'd found a small space downtown, a former bookstore with large windows and good light. Within a month, with Anthony's help and her savings, she opened a cafe. Simple, cozy, with homemade pastries and coffee that Marco would have approved of. Sophia insisted on helping decorate. Her crayon drawings covered one entire wall, families of all kinds, gardens full of flowers, and in the center, a picture of 3 people holding hands. When Claire asked who they were, Sophia answered with perfect certainty, "That's our family. Daddy, you and me." 6 months after their arrival, Claire stood behind the counter of her cafe, watching Anthony and Sophia through the window. They were walking along the beach, Sophia running ahead to chase seagulls, Anthony following with patient amusement. A customer asked, "That your family?" Claire paused, then smiled with a certainty that surprised her. Yes, they are." That evening, they celebrated Sophia's 5th birthday with cake and candles and the kind of simple joy that had once seemed impossible. As Claire tucked Sophia into bed, the little girl looked up at her with sleepy eyes. "Claire, I'm glad you're my family now." "Me too, sweetheart. Me too." Later, sitting on the porch with Anthony, watching the sunset paint the ocean in shades of gold, Claire reflected on the journey that had brought them here. It had started with 3 seconds. 3 seconds to decide to help a crying child. Those 3 seconds had changed everything. "Any regrets?" Anthony asked quietly. Claire thought about her old life, about what she'd left behind. Then she thought about Sophia's laughter, about the family they'd built from impossible circumstances, about second chances and new beginnings. "Not a single one," she said honestly. "Not one. Because some families are born, others are chosen, and some are forged in moments of courage that change everything." And as the sun set on their new life, Claire understood a fundamental truth. Home wasn't a place. It wasn't 4 walls or a familiar city or a neighborhood where everyone knew your name. Home was wherever the people you loved felt safe, and she was finally truly home. 3 years later, Sophia started 2nd grade at the local elementary school. She brought home a writing assignment. "What makes your family special?" Her answer was simple but profound. "My family is special because we chose each other. Daddy says that's the strongest kind of love, the kind you choose every day. Claire isn't my mommy, but she's my family, and that's even better because she chose to love me. We're different than other families, but different is good. Different means we understand what really matters." Claire framed that paper and hung it in the cafe, where it still hangs today.